Well, hello there. How's it going? My name is Albert Huang, aka FedHex, and this is episode number 10 of How to Dance Liquid. And in today's episode, just like in many other episodes, I'm going to talk about something that's just sort of related to liquid, but is not exactly liquid in and of itself. But obviously, I'm going to take it from a liquid perspective. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to be a really good liquid dancer, you should learn a lot of other sort of cross disciplines. And the topic that I'm going to be covering today is miming. Just this stuff here, obviously the classic, like, I'm stuck in a box sort of thing, or putting your arm on a rest. That's it. Oh, the rope, right? Or walking downstairs as you pass. Right. All right, anyway, I'm going to talk more about this episode. By that definition, is going to be super lame, but obviously I'm going to talk about the exciting, interesting parts about it, the science, if you will, which is not really science, it's just sort of my pseudoscience. Anyway, I'm rambling, I'm just going to get on with it. Miming, which is cool. Great. So, what is miming, right? Miming is this old-fashioned form of movement, at least definitely very, very old-fashioned compared to liquid or many urban styles of dance. Basically, the activity of miming is when you pretend with your body and you tell a story with your body that there is an object there that really isn't there, right? So, obviously, the classic example of a man stuck in a box, right? You use your hands to sort of describe this thing that's in front of you, and then check it out, there's like a wall over here too, right? And these walls meet over in this corner here, and then, oh my God, I'm stuck in a box. Oh God, right? So obviously, I just told you a story, and that's a miming routine, right? And that's a classic one, people can really sell it, and it when it's done correctly, it's just like so much fun to watch. When you watch a good mime, because good mimes are just sort of really killer at what they do, and they make you sort of empathize with them. There's a lot that goes into it. They make you sort of follow along with their story and their journey. And why don't we take a little bit of time to reflect as to what is going on there? What are the mechanics behind the miming techniques that they're using? How can we use those mechanics to help us out as liquid dancers? When can we do miming, and when is it appropriate to avoid miming? And a whole host of other questions that sort of come up organically when you start thinking about it. So, first of all, I just want to go over that really big question of how is it related to liquid, right? So, with the liquid stuff that I've been teaching you so far, let's just take this rail for example. It's not really miming, I don't think. I wouldn't call it miming as much, simply because I would say with the liquid, as I'm performing it, I'm creating this internal logic. There's just sort of this system here, and I'm executing the system, right? The figure 8 stuff, it's also, I don't really think that I'm miming a ball up here and miming a ball down here. I mean, one could do that, I guess. But that's sort of not the motivation behind my movements, right? The motivation behind my movements is to just flail my arms in this 8-like pattern because it's kind of pretty and fun to do, right? Whereas I'm drawing this distinction because when you do miming, the main motivation behind the classic mime gestures is to tell a story. Like, oh my God, there is a wall in front of me. It is obvious to everyone involved. To me, to my audience, to the dude just walking by and glancing out of the corner of his eye, that when I do this, I'm pretending there's a wall here, and I'm making it so interesting that everyone believes that there's a wall here, right? Whereas if somebody was just walking by and saw me do this, they would not say, oh, he's got a ball up here and a ball down here, and he's just sort of contouring it, right? So I would say that a lot of the liquid stuff, at least the way I like to think about it is that it's just sort of, there's this internal logic, there's this balance that is preserved as you perform these movements, but there's not necessarily, the intent behind these movements is to just explore space in an interesting three-dimensional way that happens to have this like architecture and structure around it. And often that structure and or architecture comes with objects, right? Like so often that architecture can be like things that are out here that move around in space. Or sort of take on a mimetic aspect to them. Mimetic being the adjective form of mime. Yes. Yes. And being a bunch of other things. Mimetic is a really big word. I'm not going to try to unpack that. Anyway, so, okay, so let's talk really, so I guess, sorry, to encapsulate all the things that I was saying so far, liquid on the standard is just about moving through space with an internal logic, and miming tends to be more overt. It tends to be more of a relationship being established between the performer and the audience member, simply because they're creating an illusion and they're connoting the illusion and they're creating a story that is wrapped up within that illusion, right? So let's talk about how these illusions are being created from a mechanical perspective. So these things, right? This wall is a really great place to start. Here's a question to think about. What is the difference between just placing your hand up in space in front of you, like this, right? And miming a wall in front of you, right? So when I'm miming a wall in front of me, just with one hand, it's still a little bit more obvious that there's a wall here than if I was just to go like this, right? And then there are a few interesting things that are going on here. So if you take a side look at what's going on, I hit the wall like this, right? Which is, in reality, check it out, sweet, that's exactly what I do. I hit the wall like this. I don't go like this to a wall. Well, sometimes you could, I guess. But when you're going to touch a wall, you like approach it, usually from a 90-degree angle, right? So, same as being said here, I'm going to hit this wall, and there it is, right? Also, what mime technique involves is when you place your hand on the object, or if you're like grabbing a cup, you want to do a little bit of a pop at the end, and I don't really know what the term that they use is called, but it's basically you're just like doing a pop. You're not gonna do like the big like thwack that we do as poppers. You don't go, right? Which is gonna be really weird because when you know the whole point of this activity is to create a sense of realism. And if, I never, when I grab like a cup in real life, I don't go like this when I grab it. Like the cup isn't like, unless the cup has electrical properties and it's shocking me, in which case it's a different story altogether. But, right, so typically, but you also don't just sort of put your hand in the same spot as the boundaries of the cup, right? You don't just go like that. You actually you grab it, right, and it gives you a little bit of resistance. And a good way to signify to your audience member that your hand has made meaningful contact with this object is to give it a little bit of a pop, right? Boom. And it also happens that when the object moves in space or when it settles into space, you can also give it a sort of naturalistic pop, right? So if I have this cup here that I've just grabbed, I'm going to pop a little bit to lift it up and then drink it, and then pop it when it comes back down, right? And another way to think about that is that the way I like to think about this is when you're like attacking or putting it down, imagining that it makes a noise, right? And what sort of physical activity must occur with that noise? And I imagine that there's some sort of contact, some slapping, or some when a cup hits a table, there's the ceramic of the cup touching the tabletop, right? Right, and that because of that contact, because of the collision, that creates a little bit of a pop audibly, and you can visualize the audibleness of that pop, the audibleness, yes, of that pop with a little bit of a shake, right? Boom. Okay, so in terms of the what I've talked about so far, we've talked about the approach that you use to get somewhere, right? You don't, obviously, if I'm miming this wall, I don't go like this, right? Because the wall is preventing me from doing that, right? So you have the approach that you take, and also just the popping that you do when you get on that object, right? And another thing that, if you're going to do the wall thing, another thing to think about is if you just tell some random person, hey, put your hand up in the air, they're going to go like this, right? Or they're going to do this or something, I don't know, right? So you're not actually going to be a completely flat hand. And to make a really convincing wall, you might want to really work on that flat hand. Also, you're not going to be just going like this off the wall. Nobody just touches the wall like this, because if you look at it, my natural inclination is to curl my hand as I come off the wall, right? So obviously, I'm not, this is just weird. No one touches walls like that, right? So when you're doing these, it makes sense to lift off the wall and sort of glom onto the wall, right? Cool. So obviously there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here that's super relevant to liquid. So where is this like overtness super useful for us, right? I like the idea that like when you do these things, you're taking a moment to really communicate an idea to your audience, right? There's a lot of miming that does occur within the subset of liquid, and it is totally possible to be a liquid performer without doing any miming. But if you were to just take a little bit of the architecture that you're already using, so let's say I'm using this architecture to create this rail here, and now I have it, right? Now I'm miming with it, and it becomes an object, and I get to communicate this with my audience. Boom. And if I want to, I can translate, I can use the same sort of transition to transition away from it, and it becomes back to just sort of, it becomes sort of a phantom, or it becomes like a figment of everyone's imagination, and it no longer exists, right? Now I like to if I am doing some miming, I like to imbue it with some sort of significance, right? That significance could be a physical object, so it could be if I'm having a box here that now all of a sudden I'm moving, right? And I have to like carry this box up some stairs or something. So that's sort of the significance I'm talking about. Now all of a sudden it becomes a part of the story, and that, you know, although the story is a part of the craft, the audience member may or may not know exactly that, like, I'm reliving the time that I was moving from Brooklyn to Queens, right? Like, I don't need to, like, flesh out all those details for them, but it might be useful for me to be like, oh yeah, I remember moving boxes like this one time in my life. I was really sweaty, and I, like, had to climb up, you know, 2 flights of stairs, and it was, like, in the middle of something, whatever. All these details are going to be, like, now this box is not only, like, just a physical shape, right? But it has a certain amount of weight to it, and the rest of my body is really like sweaty. There's sort of a character that's being built around this. And all of these come from, you know, the inspiration of this little detail here. And you know, I think there's a lot of miming that occurs in liquid when it comes to pipes or sort of cylindrical shapes. So you take this and you just bend it or whatever. And notice all the little things that are occurring that are based on miming technique, right? First of all, when you create the cylinder shape, you know, there's a little bit of a pop that you can add to your wrists or whatever. And then also when you move the cylinder, oh, I'm going to talk about this rope thing, right? Which is this classic, I mean, like, these things are so classic, they're cliche at this point, right? Like, this miming rope thing. Yeah. Ugh. One thing that I can't believe I haven't talked about yet is fixed point. It's like all over miming. Have I really not brought this up? Fixed point is like, it defines miming, right? If you can create a fixed point and make it meaningful, then you are miming, right? So, what this rope thing is there's a fixed point right here, pop, fixed point here, pop, and then I'm going to pull both of these fixed points towards me, or in this vector, and now, instead of doing this, because when we grab ropes we don't do that, right? I'm going to let go of the back one and then re-grab up here. So really, what I'm doing, and if you want to put your body into it, which is interesting, right? Yeah. Ugh. So what you know, and notice that as my body moves forward and backward, I am fixing these points, right? These two hands. I'm not just sort of like, as I'm moving forward, I'm not like, I don't know. I'm trying to fix the point so that the rope stays in space. If I just sort of get loose with it and just sort of do whatever, then the illusion starts to break down, and you're just sort of, you're moving, which is cool, but once again, this is about communicating to whoever's looking at you that like you got these things that you're working with, right? So what's really interesting is that you have this like horizontal one-dimensional vector, but if you want to, you can like play around with it and bend it to do different things. So this line that I'm working with as a mime, it's only just like an infinitely small line that I'm working with, but you can work with a thicker line, or a cylinder basically. So here I have the cylinder that I'm going to work with. I'll do this closer to the camera. And these cylinders have interesting properties in the sense that you can play around with them and imagine that they're different things. I don't know. So here, right, all these things that I'm doing are based on the idea that this is an object, and as I said, what I like to do is I like to fill this with a new sense of what it, I just sort of make up what it inspires in me. Here, this inspires like a, I don't know if you get posters. If you get a poster as a present, often it comes in this roll that, maybe like architects use these rolls, these big plastic tubes to ship their blueprints around in. Or you can even imagine this is like a can of pop or whatever, or soda or Coke or wherever you come from, whatever you call it. Anyway, so yeah, you have these like different shapes, and so this is like the one-dimensional thing. Here's, you can work with sort of paper as a two-dimensional thing, or walls, obviously. And because I'm fixing my point and shifting it in any dimension, and rotations count too, right? Then I'm telling a story. I'm explaining sort of, what my experience is as I interact with this shape, right? And the more specific that shape is in my mind's eye, the more specific my story will be, and the easier it will be to interact with me. Now, or to hook into my experience. And this is a moment where I'm going to talk about specificity versus universality, and we're going to get into some, I will just take a brief moment to get into some really obnoxiously academic theater speak, but basically it is a common misconception that if you want to be universal, or if you want to be, if you want to have the widest reach of audience, like let's say you have this truth burning inside you as an artist, and you just want to express it, right? It is this easy temptation, especially of younger artists, to say, the feeling is universal, so therefore I should work in only universals. Another way to put that is, if I specify the activity that I'm involved in, if I specify the artwork, then people will feel that people will not connect with me because I'm being too specific and outside of their experience, right? But here's the surprise, here's the story, you're wrong, right? Like the only way to become really universal and broad is to have one specific story that you're telling from a human experience that everyone shares, right? So everyone shares the human experience of working hard. The specificity of how you are doing hard work, let's say it's moving your friend's boxes up some stairs. The specificity of there's the sweat, there's the heat, there's the box of cardboard that's falling apart in my hands. There's the fact that it's really late. I'm really hungry. Obviously, I had some hard times moving friends in their boxes. So anyway, I got to worry about parking, right? So I'm in a hurry or whatever. So there are all these like weird, interesting details, and I'm imagining that many of you watching this video have no experience at all moving your friends in the sweaty heat of a New York City summer up 2 flights of stairs while you're like you're trying to manage logistics as to where the car is parked, right? So obviously that's like crazy specific and like specific to my experiences, but the fact of the matter is because when I'm explaining the story and because I'm focusing most on the fact that like I'm just this random dude that's in this weird circumstance, you have also been a random person in many weird circumstances. Maybe you can connect to the fact that I'm in a rush, right? If I just stood here and said, I'm holding this abstract shape, and for some reason I'm in a rush, and for some reason I'm fatigued, then I'm going to act fatigued and in a rush, which is not necessarily as specific as like, I got to think about parking, and like, I've been doing this for 10 hours straight, right? Instead of actually like enacting, I've been doing this 10 hours straight, I'll just be like, acting as fatigued, which is a weak way to act, I guess. Anyway, that is my tangent, and I'm only trying to say all of that to bring it back to say, to make your mimes really specific and cool, think about really specific and cool things in your life experience, right? And that could be something from your past, that could be things that you're wishing for in the future, or whatever, things that you fixate on your daily level. I like to like put those in little boxes and have this little box, which is maybe my desire to be healthy, with this little box, which is my desire to do to like work on a particular project, and combat it out in the sense that both of them require a certain amount of my attention and time. And so the healthy one, it gets jittery and angry or whatever, because that's how I feel when I want to exercise, but I don't have the time to. And this one is like flat and shiny and whatever. I'm being weird and abstract, but my desire to work on big projects is like expansive, and I love doing that. And I have this jittery thing, and how are these things going to interact with one another? And that's how I abstractly mime things. But hopefully that can serve as a little bit of an inspiration for you to say, here's this object here, and it has sort of a magical quality to it because it has these digits associated with it. But check out how specific and fun it gets to be when you can say, oh, this is sort of like a magic fairy in a video game that I once played. Then all of a sudden, it has like properties, and it can change who you are as a character, right? Okay. So yes, take miming. This is my conclusion, I guess. Take all that you can learn from miming, sort of put that into your liquid repertoire, and all of a sudden, I think you'll find that these sort of general shapes and feelings that you have. If you can add a little bit of specificity to that, and if you can start working on a little bit of presentation with these specific ideas, then your dance becomes something else. It becomes something that you can use to play with friends with. It becomes something that you can present, and it becomes something that you can sort of evolve with. Sweet. Thank you for tuning in. Hit the like button below. I'm gonna be that guy. Hit the like button below. Subscribe and all that jazz. Tell all your friends how cool I am. All right, guys. Peace out. Bye.